3, 2, 1. We are live.
Let me just reread what I gotta say. I didn't even look at that. Hello everyone, welcome back to The Rift. Last week I asked you what your favorite Battle Royale game was, and we had exactly one comment, yes, just one, from M.W. Pretorius, who said, Apex, it's just the best. Granted, I've never played COD Warzone and 10 minutes of Fortnite, but Apex's mechanics are just so much fun. The slide, the parkour, and the special movement abilities of some characters. As a person who isn't the best at FPS games and has a general ping of around 200, there's that lovely ping again I talked about last week, the ability to outmaneuver opponents really gives me a fighting chance. Generally, in Apex, you have more health than in other Battle Royale games. I think this is a fantastic insight into why this person and maybe others like Apex more than other Battle Royale games. We're going to try a new segment here at the end of the podcast where Bilal teaches you something more technical. If you stick around to the end, Bilal will show you how to implement jumping in Unity. If you're more of the impatient kind, you'll find that link for the timestamp down below.
And for what it's worth, Pretorius, if I may call you that, 100% agree with you that Apex is definitely the one I enjoyed the most, but it's been a while since I've played one, so, you know.
Alright, so this week, Bilal's going to talk about what's new in game dev, hot news kind of thing to start us off. Not really new, but we're going to talk about Among Us here. So, Bilal, one of the big questions that we always get from people is, can a developer or a small team make a similar game?
And one thing that is always asked is, like, one person will ask, can I make a Grand Theft Auto game? And the answer with games like that is usually kind of a no, in a way. Because you can make something where, yeah, you steal cars and run people over, but you can't make a game that's, like, on the scale of Grand Theft Auto in that, I mean, open a game and look at the credits of any AAA game, like, there's like 300 people working on that. So you have to have a scope, which in English means, you know, having a set of features that you're sure you're going to implement that are viable for how many people are making it. So a game like Among Us, let's say, has a scope that's not that huge, because if you look at the game, it's essentially, you know, killing two people can become imposter. There's multiplayer of up to 10 players, and it's not that complex. There's a few more features. So I would say that technically, yeah, one person could make it. I don't actually know the story of Among Us or whether more than one person has made it. I would say that given the time, one person could, but you probably want to bring at least a buddy with you when making that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get something that works that well. Bilal and I have some experience. He makes the games. I really don't program that much, so it's kind of a lot of work for one person to do. So looking at Among Us, Bilal, what engine does it use?
Among Us is on Unity, I believe. Most games are nowadays. not literally, but a lot of them are. There's a huge portion of mobile that is.
Okay, so can you break down for us the technical features like the walking, the killing, the cooldowns?
Sure. One thing that's important is before you program something, you want to be sure what you're making, which is not it sounds so obvious, but not a lot of people do that. Not a lot of people really stop to think, what am I actually trying to make here? What am I trying to do here before they get into programming it? Because we're just excited to make something, right? But it's important to plan out what it is you're going to make, even from just saying, it's going to be a game that includes this, this, and this. So Among Us is a game that includes, obviously, locomotion. You can walk around, you can run around. There's a list of servers, so a master server, and the ability to host games or servers. You can join all these servers, you can join a random server, or you can have a private one using a code. And then once you actually get into the game, you know, there's walking, running around. 2 people, you know, 1 to 2 people get assigned as imposter, or I guess 1 to 3. The rest of them get assigned as crewmates. And, you know, there's killing, there's cooldowns, there's the emergency timer, and just basically a lot of the game is really just a flow of moving between game modes. So there's more than you would think originally, like, first when you look at Among Us, you just think, oh, it's a game where somebody's an imposter, they can kill you, that's it, whatever. But there's actually a lot more in there, and it does take a lot of time to make all of that. And so, as a developer, oftentimes it is, you'll say it is work, but it's not necessarily hard work. It's just there are problems to solve there are things to implement, so it takes time.
So, to go along with that, is it easy to implement the imposter kills and the cooldowns, or is it a very difficult task?
Yeah, I would say that that portion is pretty simple. Obviously, it's a little bit different when you make a multiplayer game in that you don't want people to cheat. So a cooldown might be recorded on somebody on a remote server that's controlling the game, just for the sake of people not manually editing their cooldowns. The concept of killing and a cooldown is really not so complex. I mean, when you kill someone, you have to disable, you're just changing their state. Like now they can't walk, now their sprite changed to a death sprite, and then afterward there's a cooldown. So really a cooldown is it's like addition essentially. So what you could do is just have a cooldown time. You add that onto the next. One very simple example is, let's say you have a next fire time or next kill time. You set that to time.time, so the current time plus however long it takes to get to the cooldown, and then you just check whether time.time has passed that cooldown time or that next kill time. So it really is just, if you have a cooldown of 10, you add 10 to a number, and then you can kill again.
Okay.
So
we do have a video of cooldowns and how those work. I'll drop that link down in the description. Maybe if I remember, I'll put that pop-up somewhere up at the top. No one ever remembers to do that anyways. But sort of a more in-depth look at cooldowns and how those work. So, looking at Among Us, how did they make the assets in the game?
Can't say personally. They could have used everything is a sprite. So really, they could have used Paint. They could have used Photoshop. They could have used Illustrator. Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. They could have used GIMP, which is essentially a free software version of Photoshop.
So if looking at, you've done a lot of Illustrator work, you know how much work it actually is to do that kind of stuff. If it was just you making an exact replica of Among Us, how long would it take you to make this?
In terms of everything, or just the sprites?
The whole. I guess separate it for just the sprites and then to make a whole functioning game.
Sure. So I guess if you were just making the art for Among Us, I mean, there's three maps in Among Us. There's the UI, there's the characters, the whole imposters, and the animations. So that, I'm sure, could have, it depends on how fast you are, because being a human is a very real thing. There's burnout exists, and you don't work at the same pace constantly. So that could be anywhere from a month is really pushing it to 3 or 4 months, sometimes even 6. There's really no way to be sure, but you should always assume it's going to take somewhere in the middle. I like to assume that it'll be somewhere in the middle plus some amount. So 75, let's say 75% of the time.
So I guess a rough estimate, 2 months if you work really hard, and then about an extra month for trial and error between finding all the bugs, getting it to work right.
I would say for the art specifically, let's give an estimate of 3 months. For the game itself, let's say 6 months. If it's just you.
So it is quite a lengthy process. It's not something that someone's going to whip up and steal Among Us all their revenue within the next 2 months.
Well, they could, but the thing, so I would say it depends on how big your team is. I mean, if you've got somebody doing art and you're doing programming, and you're working asynchronously, let's say you both finish in 3 months, then now you've got a game in 3 months. Or maybe you make a prototype there's only one map, and then the rest is just like Among Us, and with simpler sprites, then, you could get it done in 3 months. But it really depends on, what other features you're going to add on there. Is there one map? Is there one character? That kind of stuff.
Are there any, I guess, closing things you want to say about Among Us before we jump into the next part here?
I will say that it's interesting, and it's cool to see that there are game ideas that can explode that have no they don't look AAA at all. Nothing about Among Us feels or looks AAA. Like the servers don't work. The the art looks like it's made in paint. Like it's kind of a mess. No offense to the developers, it's kind of a mess, but like it's also excellent in that they decided what they were gonna make. They made it, they released it, and they did well. And power to them. So it's nice to see that kind of stuff happening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually do enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
I suck at it because I still don't know all of the things that happen with us. Like that, there's a cooldown after you kill someone. That would be why I lost quite a few times recently.
Yeah.
But it is a game that I actually do enjoy. So I guess jumping into the next section here, sort of the news topic from my side. What's new on 3D printing microcontrollers type thing? Today I just want to highlight the Raspberry Pi keyboard. It's essentially a full keyboard with the Raspberry Pi internals already inside of it, so you no longer have to connect a keyboard. It comes as a 78 key keyboard for the US model. There's 3 USB 2.0 type A ports. It's got automatic keyboard language detection. There is a USB-A to micro USB type B cable included for you to connect to a monitor. And it is compatible with all other Raspberry Pi products. I got the very, very first Raspberry Pi. It's sitting somewhere in my office over there. I haven't messed around with it too much. Bilal and I dinked around with it. God, what was that? High school when that thing originally came out? Something like that. It's great to see something so cheap. It's getting to be more expensive now, but it's great to see something so cheap being produced to get more people into programming and the computer world.
The thing I've seen that's super cool with them is when people make those like emulators or those Game Boys with them. That stuff is, I find, super cool.
That is awesome. Yeah.
But on that keyboard, so does that just plug into micro USB, or how exactly does that plug into the Pi?
Yeah. So on the back of the keyboard, there's I think 5 ports. There's your power port. Plug that into the wall. Then you've got the 3 USBs, and then you've got one for a mouse that you can connect. And they do have a Raspberry Pi mouse. I do kind of like their color scheme. It's like the raspberry color and a white. We'll see how long it takes for that to get all brown and black and nasty.
Cool.
Then it's got the USB Type B on the back to connect to a monitor. You can connect a lot more now that you don't have to connect a keyboard to it. And I believe the first Raspberry Pi that came out had 2 USB ports, a mouse and a keyboard, and then everything was full. So you had to connect an adapter to extend your USB ports. So now we're going to move to the next part, more of a video announcements, what's coming up in the future. I am planning to do, I guess, my first programming video by myself. It'll go through the Elegoo Uno R3 starter kit's first lesson. Something very basic, just to look at the ecosystem, how the programming actually works in there, and just to see if we can get something to work. Again, I've never actually programmed with that Uno R3. I have no idea what I'm doing, so it's going to be a very big lesson on watching me struggle through and seeing if I can do anything.
Yeah, hey man, well if you need any help, we can jump on that.
I think I know a programmer that might know a thing or two.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming on my end for a video. Bilal, are you looking to make a video in the near future on something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but maybe we'll do. I suppose like one thing I'm thinking about is going back to some tutorials. They're not the most fun thing, admittedly, but some of them I don't mind making, and I really want to make ones that provide value. So if you have an idea of what's going to help, then make sure to leave a comment about that, because for example, one thing I'm thinking of based on our jump video doing really well is making some different forms of jumping for people that want a better approach to that. So if you have any like requests for certain things, then make sure to leave them in the comments.
Okay, perfect. So with that, we're going to jump into Bilal showing us how to jump.
I've got this Unity scene here, and I made a jump controller for it. You already saw some of the code, but what I'm going to do is restart, So I'm going to remove this controller script, and I'm just going to start all over again, and I'm going to pull it over to the side for me here as a reference. So I've got really just two super simple things here, and there's some bugs with this, and it's not my favorite implementation. So I'm going to say that at the start, but it's a very simple way to implement jumping using like a sine wave. And the reason that you might want to use a sine wave is because the way that a sine wave goes is it eases in, goes really high, and then eases out, right? So I'm going to create a script here on our sprite that I will rename first to the player. And here is obviously the ground. So the player I need to add a component to, which is a script. So I'll write something new called jump controller. And I'm going to create it and add it. You'll see it popped up over here. And I should be able to double click it to open it. And my IDE should open up. Okay. So I'm using Writer. Obviously, you can use Visual Studio or VS Code. You can literally type in a text editor. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to delete our start function. And I'm going to pull this over to the side. So there's kind of a couple concepts that we have to implement here. So we want to make our player follow a sine wave when I'm holding space to jump up, but when I let go of space, or then I should fall until I hit the ground again. Once I hit the ground again, I should be able to jump again. So to do that, I'm going to need a few values here. So one of them is the time that I'm holding space, right? That's going to start at 0, so it's going to be defaulted. And I'm going to have another floating point number that is the maximum time that I can hold spacebar to, to jump. So it's essentially going to be how high I can go. So the max hold time is going to be 1 by default. There's 2 more here. So these are the jump value. So there's another float jump value equals 0. And I actually don't need that equals 0. And I'll do another one called private float max jump value. So this one is, again, that's how high I can go. And there's a reason that these are separate, and it's not the best implementation, but we'll get into it. So now that I have these values, so jump value is going to change based on how long I'm holding the space bar, and that will be what's literally applied to the character. So first, what I'm going to do is just implement, if I'm holding space, then follow a sine wave, right? So let's do if get input dot get key code dot spacebar, and note that this is a very fast implementation. So I'm using this get key function, which literally just uses a key code. Which means I can't change it. If you wanted to change it, you'd have to use get button instead of get key. So what I can do here is, while I'm holding space, hold time can add time.delta time. So what this means is it'll add on the change in time since the last frame, because update runs every frame. So this is essentially like saying, as time happens, append the time to this variable. So that just means, like, if a second passes, hold time will be hold time plus a second. So now what I'm going to do is update our jump value, which is just going to equal jump time plus time.delta time. So this is kind of the same thing, but there's another problem. Sorry, not jump time. I mean jump value. So this is the same thing, but I want to add another part to this. Which is I want to max it out so that the jump value only goes as high as I'm jumping, right? So one way I can do that is I can pick the minimum between jump value and the maximum jump value. So I'm going to write that out right now. So I can do mathf.minimum. And then I can say jump value plus time.delta time. So I can move that in here. And then I can make the maximum be max jump value here. So again, what that means is this, it'll pick the minimum between these two values. The reason I want that is because if this ever gets above max jump value, it'll just use max jump value. That means it's a total cutoff. It's kind of like clamping, but only one direction. So I think that if I do this, I just need to make a jump function here now. So to jump, I'm going to just add on to my transform. So let's do a private void jump function here. And this will take a jump value. Well, amount, I guess. So in here, I'm going to first store my position so I'm not accessing it multiple times. Then I'm going to say transform.position equals new vector3. Vector2, sorry. Because we are doing just 2D jumping here. So what I'll do first is I'm just going to add the position's x value, and then my y value is going to literally equal the amount along a sine wave, right? So before I continue with this, what I'm going to do is show you what that sine is. So there's sine value, let's say. So what I can do here is literally use the math f sine function. So math f dot sine. And because a sine wave does what I said it does, so it peaks up at the top, and then it has and it's like it eases in down here and to the right of it. So what that means is I want to reach, I want to start at 0 because that's where it's at 0, and I want to end at pi over 2, basically, because at pi over 2 is when the sine wave eases back out. So to do that, I can simply write time, or I guess amount here, and then multiply that by pi, which is a constant in Unity's MathF library. And then I can multiply that by 0.5, because again, that will offset 0 to 1 range. It'll offset it to be 0 to pi over 2. Okay, so now what I can do is add a call to this jump function here, and just call jump on jump value. So there's a problem with this in that it's not fully going to do what we want yet, but we can just try it out because that's what we do when we're programming. Just see what this does, right? So if I hold space, it looks like nothing's happening yet. So I'm going to debug that. I'm going to open my jump controller again. I see update, get key, jump value equals this. And it's because I have this commented out, totally skipped that part. So I just need to write sine value in for the y value. So what's happening here is I store the position, I call a sine function on the jump amount, and then I just set the position to be the same position on x and the sine value on y. So now we should be able to see that happen. So if I hold space, I go up, and then, I just stop at that maximum value. And even if I hold space for some more, it'll never go any higher. So I'm gonna go back to Rider, and the next thing I want to do is I want to make the player drop, essentially. So there's two ways that I can do that. So one of them is, well, actually, I'm just gonna do one way right now. That's not the right thing to say. But so basically, I'm gonna max off the hold time here so that the player drops. So what I can do is if hold time is less than max time, then if I'm holding space, do this stuff, right? And then if I'm not holding space, then I just want the jump value to go down. So jump value minus time.delta time and 0, and change this to a max. So what's going to happen here is if my hold time is less than my maximum time, then I can hold spacebar, and if not, then I can't hold spacebar anymore. And this code will well, we'll see what happens, but it's incomplete in that this is only happening when I'm not holding space and hold time is less than max time. So it's not going to quite do what we want yet. But if I'm holding space and I let go, then nothing happens because I was holding it for the maximum time. But if I do that for halfway, then it'll work. So how do I make it so that even if I've held on to spacebar for the maximum time, how do I make it drop when I've let go of space? And the answer to that is really just I need another else statement outside of here that kind of does the same thing as this. So if I literally copy and paste that as an else over here, then I should be able to, if when I hold space, go up, and when I let go, drop. Or even when I keep holding space, it'll happen. There's one more problem that I can't jump again, and I'm going to fix that right now. So one way we can do that is just with this on collision enter function. So here we can just do hold time equals 0. So the reason I can do that is because hold time will reset back to 0, and that means that I can press the spacebar again. Because again, over here, it's checking whether hold time is less than the maximum time I can hold. So if hold time has passed that, I can't go up anymore. So I'm just going to be dropping. And then once I hit something, and this needs to be 2D, sorry. So on collision, I'm going to delete that. Here we go. Hold time equals 0. So setting hold time to 0 in this case is just basically resetting my ability to jump. So I can go over here. And if I hold space and let go, it'll drop, and I can do it again. And if I hold down space, then I'll just be permanently jumping. So there's a couple bugs. I think if I hit space really fast, then it does something. And I can also hit space again in the air. So how can I make it so I can only jump once? The answer to that is basically when I press get key up, I can set the hold time to basically the maximum time. So that means like if I'm jumping and I let go, then I just lose my ability to hold anymore. So to do that, I can do if input dot get key up, which means if I've let go of the spacebar, then what I can do here is I can set hold time to max time. And again, the reason for that is because now if I go back to the update loop, I can't press space to jump up anymore. So let's go to Unity. Try that out. Now, no matter how many times I press space while in the air, it's still going to drop. So if I hold it, I'll jump up and down. If I press it once, then I can't go any higher. So there's one bug I've noticed with this, and that's simply due to the collider, is if I hit spacebar really fast without jumping, then I've hit the ground. So to fix that, you'd have to... That might become a non-problem with different solutions. Really, that's a problem because I'm using a non-physics-based approach and hoping that it hits the collider. So two ways we could solve that is, I could just use on-collision stay, and I'd be setting the hold time to 0 over and over and over again. That's not great. Another thing that I could do, which I won't do in this video, is use a physics-based approach where it's a sine wave when I'm jumping up, but then I let go and let gravity deal with it. So really quick, what I'll do to fix this is I'll change this to on-collision stay 2D. So this is not a great practice because this is going to be happening every frame that I sit inside of this box. But for the purpose of this tutorial, it'll make this scenario work. So, you know, some people will not agree with me for doing that, and I also don't think it's a great practice, but for the sake of this example, that's what I did, just so that you don't have that bug. But this example will be up on our GitHub organization. Just a very simple way to jump using only a sine wave. And if you have any questions like how do I make it look more realistic, or how do I do a physics-based approach, which I think is better, you know, leave them in the comments and we'll get to them.
Yeah, so just to essentially wrap up our second episode here of the podcast, if you do have questions on anything programming related, game related, just drop it down below, shoot us a link, let us know what you're thinking, what questions you have, and we'll definitely try to address those, because our main goal is to teach everyone the knowledge that, well, I don't have, but that Bilal has stored in his head. So thanks everyone for watching, and we hope to see you next time.
Yep. We'll see you guys next time.